On to the main act. I'm very excited to welcome Wade and James today to this farmer-to-farmer conversation. They have certainly kept things lively and informative on our planning calls, and so I'm looking forward to seeing where our conversation goes today. I'm going to give just the briefest of introductions of them both, and then I'll tee them up to take it away. So James Holz farms in Greene County, Iowa, and in 2014 co-founded Iowa Cover Crop with his business partner, Bill Frederick, and this is a full-service cover crop business. And Wade Dooley farms in Marshall County, Iowa, and also owns Dooley Ag Stewardship Inc, which offers custom cover crop seeding services and seed. So Wade and James, we can start wherever you want, but I think it might make sense to start at the beginning, so to speak, with the origin stories of your cover crop businesses. So, what made you decide to start a business, and what were your expectations going in? James, you're unmuted, so do you want to start?
Yeah, our journey started in 2011, 2012 was the first cover crops that we used on our family farm here in Grand Junction in Greene County. And the first huge thing, I guess the first huge cover crop year we had was 2012, and that was a drought year. And just because everything got out really early, we were able to put on cover crop with a drill, and we really saw amazing growth. And that was right near a lot of talk about the nitrogen suit with Des Moines Waterworks, or there was rumblings about it. And so I started selling cover crop seed by myself at that point in 2012. And at the time, in 2012, I was the only person advertising cereal rye in the state of Iowa in the major publications. And so we started selling cereal rye, and Bill was kind of doing the same thing, selling some small grains off of his combine in Jefferson. Him and I went to high school together, and after college, both ended up back at the farm. And so in 2014, we decided to start a little business that we didn't think was going to probably amount to much, but we really didn't want to compete against each other. So we started Iowa Cover Crop. We started an LLC, and for an LLC, one partner has to have 51%, and the other one has to have 49%. And so we played a game of risk, and whoever was the last person standing got majority ownership of the business. And you're looking at the majority owner right now. So if you want to talk about strategy, Bill, I kind of have one up on Bill on that one. So we started in 2014, and Bill bought a little wooden cleaner on Craigslist up in South Dakota. And we started cleaning our own seed in 14, 15, and started with probably around a semi-load of seed. And in 2020, we did about 170 semi-loads of seed. And so now we've leased seed clean plants. We have a couple employees. We offer full service cover crop seeding and have an array of dealers across the state of Iowa. So it's really ballooned into a real business. So we'll touch about all the details in between here. Go ahead, Wade.
All right, so my operation is nothing like James's as far as scale. We'd been doing cover crops most of my life on our farm here in central Iowa, and the price of rye started going up there in the late of the first decade of 2000s, and it started getting way more expensive to put on our rye as a cover crop for our farm, and we were also tying in with neighbors putting on cover crops. We didn't have a drill at the time. Everything was broadcast either with an airplane or with a 3-point spreader. And so I decided I could grow my own rye cheaper than I could buy it. And I hired 1 year a guy to drill, and he sourced the rye for me. It was not the best decision in the world because he sourced it out of the Dakotas. They didn't check to see if there was any weed seed in it, and they brought in weeds we'd never seen before. So that was fun. And then I decided I wanted to have my own drill and be able to be in charge of my own seeding and be able to source my own seed. And so when I started pricing the cost of a drill for my own operation, I very quickly realized that I was probably going to have to hire out to be able to pay for it. And so that's where I started doing custom seeding. And that's why I did custom seeding, that's how I made my drill payments. And since then I've grown it from there. And this year I got tied in with PFI and their new entrepreneur program for cover crop businesses. And so then I was able to actually form a real business thanks to their help. So, and now I'm running an actual business with a name and goals for scaling up. Thus far, I've been running about 1,000 acres of custom work over the years, just every year, just to make the drill payment. But I'm hoping to triple that here in the next year with some directed marketing and that sort of thing. So I know James has been doing some serious marketing over the years, and he's got some pretty good ideas, I think.
Well, I mean, I think where you hit the nail on the head when Bill and I started, we really thought other businesses would get into the space, and so we decided that we probably better offer application business, and that's really where we started, just because it was easier for us to sell seed to the customer through an airplane or a drill, that we were doing the drilling or tendering it to the airplane, than it was to sell them bags of seed. And what we found is we would go to the airport with a tender full of seed, and there'd be some guy there that'd be breaking 50-pound bags. And it was for Bill and I, it was great marketing, because we'd go to that airport and we talk to that farmer, and we'd be like, oh, here's the seed. You could probably get it cheaper from us, and you won't have to break the bags. And all you got to do is send us a check. And so that makes cover crop seeding a lot easier. And then it's also more hyper local, on, a smaller scale. And that's the only way I really think cover crops can really get large in the state of Iowa, is with many, many people with drills and chasing airplanes, stuff like that. So what do you think, Wade?
No, I totally agree. That's I've scaled up my rye production primarily because I was able to run it through my drill for customers. Most of my sales of rye seed is through the drill, because most guys don't have the equipment, they don't have the time, they don't want to mess with it. It's so much easier for them to just pick up the phone and say, hey, I've got 75 acres here. We just got done with the combine, so go ahead. And then they're done making any decisions. They're done with all of it, and they can keep combining. So it's worked out that way. There's been some issues with that, because when you start going distances, then you start running into logistical hurdles, getting seed from this place to that. I'm in one place and the seed's in the other, and now I got to go back and forth. And and I'm kind of a one-man shop. My folks help out when they can, but I try and keep it as as solo as possible, so that I'm not leaning on them too much. But I know you guys have employees and you've got logistical plans. Like how has it shifted from when you guys first started to now? What does your logistical system look like now?
Yeah, I wish I could change my backdrop. Bill has this photo on our Facebook page, and if you have a chance, go visit it. But Bill has a photo of our Facebook page, and we used to joke around that our seed business was just a wooden cleaner, an old clipper cleaner. We still have it. Did not use it last year, but as of 2 years ago, we did. They do a great job. Had a wood clipper cleaner, and three I don't know what Bill had, John Deere Bs, I don't know, some like Massey Ferguson tractors, like old ones, and a bunch of 6-inch augers. And like those augers would go every single direction. And so that's how we started. And we just ran that plant to, we call it a plant. We ran that little clipper pretty hard. The problem that we had that we didn't think about was when it rained, we couldn't clean seed. And so we, I think in 2017, it rained like all of August. And we got into a bind because we had so many commitments. And when it was raining, we couldn't clean seed. And so, that was a logistical challenge for us. And that's when we decided that we needed to do something different, either invest in a plant on our own. And luckily there was a plant nearby that we were able to lease. And so we leased a plant. Otherwise, if we wouldn't have done that, it was a couple days, almost a week in August. I think we only cleaned like a semi-load of seed, and we had like 30 sold for the next week. So it was a little trying times. But Bill's the main seed cleaning man, and he has run the seed cleaner all the way till midnight, 1 a.m. with a little headlamp cleaning seed. So that has happened before. So but logistics with cover crop is the most difficult thing, and it's that's where, for our business, where we really are strong at, and that's how we've been able to keep seed in front of our customers, because it's a really tight window.
Yeah, I hear you on the cleaning issues. I started out with a Clipper 2B. So that's the smallest of the clipper cleaners. 20 bushel, 25 bushel an hour. Takes a long time to clean a semi-load.
Yeah, that is slow. I was always worried because ours did about 200, but Bill had a pretty good shade tree there, and he would sit underneath the shade tree and talk on his phone and clean seed. But I also think there was a few beers involved there too, because he was just waiting for the. And the best is he's on this call and he can't even say anything about it, so that's good too. So, but yeah, there's. But since then, we've just had to just become more efficient, because the cover crop. That's the most difficult thing about this cover crop business. If you think about corn and soybeans, they are harvested in the fall. You have all winter to place them. And the problem with these small grains is rye comes off first, rye or wheat, and it basically comes off the end of July, but you have to blow some air on it usually to make it keep. And so you're really talking the 1st of August, and in our aerial application business, it all needs to be on by the 1st of September. So it's a super tight turnaround. And that makes it really difficult. Are you doing any aerial application, Wade?
Yeah, a little bit. It changes year to year. On our own operation, we do fly on quite a bit. In 2019, everything was flown on because we saw that it was going to be a wet fall. And so I knew that it was going to be easier to fly it on and get the rains on it, rather than try and get a drill in after harvest at the same time I'm trying to drill for other people. And that was the right choice then, because, man, I didn't even get the drill in anybody's field until mid-November in 19, because it was so wet around here. 2020 was not a good year to fly on because everything was so blasted dry. And so I had a lot of customers that switched out of aerial application because of it being so blasted dry. I had a few guys that went and flew on. My dad flew his on, and somehow the timing was perfect, and it's gorgeous. But it's like the best field in the county for aerial application this year, because everything else does not look that great. So,
yeah, that's what I did. Some for my dad. It was really good. And then like 2 days later, I did one of mine, and it is not good. And so it's the weather on aerial application is really paramount if it's going to be a good stand or not.
Yeah, the aerial seeding for us, like anymore, I try and watch the weather forecasts and then try and guess whether we're going to have a wet fall or a dry fall. And yeah, I did not guess this last fall was going to be quite as dry as it was.
And I don't know if you see this in your business, Wade, though, like once you start to get customers, your own fields start to get maybe pushed back a little bit and not on the priority list. At least that's definitely happened in my business. That my dad, Howard, is typically treated the worst of all the customers just because it's, you got to get the customers on and he's going to forgive you in the end. And so if you do start a business, an aerial application or drilling business, be cognizant that you'll probably do yours last or not ideal.
Yep.
Is that the same with you?
To some extent, although I cut back all of my row crop production to focus on small grains, which was the right thing to do, because then when I'm busy running the drill, I don't have a crop to harvest. So it's not such an issue, because that's what I ran into. It was the juggling act of, okay, do I combine soybeans or do I go and drill rye for somebody? Well, yeah, it was rough. The old adage, the cobbler's children have no shoes, is pretty accurate.
Yep. Are you just using rye, or are you using any other type of cereals? What are you raising?
So I've raised in the past, I've raised winter wheat, rye, and oats. And the winter wheat, there basically was no market for it. We were working together with a group of farmers. This was several years ago. We worked together with a group of farmers, and all of us were flying on into soybeans and in front of corn. And the winter wheat worked really well for that, but everybody was grazing it, and winter wheat just doesn't have the spring tonnage like rye does. So we all switched to rye after that, and I never grew wheat again. Although wheat's really nice to grow. Like, that's probably one of my favorite small grains to grow, because it's uniform, it dries down all the same, it's all the same height, and you fly through the field with a combine.
Yep. Well, and it's just had so many more years of breeding behind it, because it's just had a larger breeding program. I mean, basically rye hasn't had a breeding program, just recently. What's the new NDSU variety, the cover crop one? Guardian? No, not Guardian.
Gardner.
Yep, Gardner.
I've got that.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the newest, one. NDSU is the only one that has any breeding program. And are you raising any certified seed at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this year is my first year raising certified. So I've got leftovers in the bin of certified Dylan.
Sure.
Which was the other NDSU line.
That's about like 2016 release or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, and so I've got in the field right now, I've got foundation seed, so it'll be registered as at the scale. You've got foundation is the beginning, and then registered, and then certified. And so I've got foundation seed planted, so I'll be selling registered Dylan and registered Gardner this summer.
Great.
So I'm excited to see it grow, because I mean, around here nobody has those to go look at to see what it looks like in their fields. And talking to the breeder up in North Dakota, I mean, he's really fascinating to talk to, but like, I can't take what he tells me and assume I'm going to see the same results here in central Iowa that they get in central North Dakota.
Yep.
So
yeah, and that just goes to a great point, is there isn't a roadmap of seed laws. It's not like you can Google what are seed laws in Iowa. And so that's one thing that we learned. We have 3 different types of oats that we sell. One of it is a non-PVP, which PVP stands for plant variety protection. It's a patent on that seed. And you scroll on Craigslist of oats for sale, and I guarantee you most of them are probably selling oats for seed illegally. And that's one thing that we learned pretty quickly, just with our contacts with the other people in the seed business, is we needed to be doing everything completely by the book and really research what the rules are, and so you can legally sell seed. And it's no different on rye too. There's hybrid rye, there's those ND Dillon, ND Gardner, those are all protected varieties. So legally, you can't sell them unless they are certified. And so, you know, we on our cover crop business, we stay clear of those just for the general public. We're mostly just cleaning Ryman or Hazlitt, almost exclusively Hazlitt. And but I think going forward, if those NDSU varieties are really good, I mean, that could be pretty exciting, and that's something we'll definitely pivot to.
Yeah, I for a long time I grew varieties like Hazlitt and Danko that were off PVP, and those were pretty good varieties, but the Dillon was really impressive. I mean, it was ready almost 2 weeks earlier than the Hazlitt was, and it supposedly Gardner is earlier than Dillon, so we'll see, because they were breeding Gardner to fit the roller crimping cover crop market. So they wanted something that flowered early in May, and he said this one he thinks he nailed it. So we'll see. I would like to see that we do hit that first week of May flowering date, because that would mean, man, the guys wanting roller crimp, they could crimp it in May and get beans in at a better time period. So that'd be nice. The seed laws in Iowa, they do exist, but figuring out what they are and then finding out which ones are actually enforced is interesting. The Iowa Crop Improvement Association is supposed to be inspecting and stuff, but they are so short-staffed and underfunded that Iowa is basically the Wild West. Eventually, I feel like they're going to start cracking down. Somebody's going to get burned out there, and then they're going to start pulling folks in. So yeah, that's why I went to certified seed, and now I'm going to be raising parent lines, so that I don't have to worry about whenever they do start cracking down on folks. I'm not going to be one of them that gets bit.
Yep. Yeah. So we are primarily all of our oats are grown locally, contract grown locally. Bill raised some oats, Bill's family, and then we have some growers around our seed plant that grow some too. And we also, but for the cereals, for the most part, we buy a few locally from a couple people that have some in, but our cereals for the most part are coming out of North Dakota and some in Minnesota and a little bit in South Dakota. And we see that the seed quality as far north we get and west we get is typically better. It's a plumper, better kernel, and it's easier to clean. It's heavier. And we've had in the past some problems with germination with Iowa rye. Have you had any problems with that, Wade?
Oh man, yes, but only because I screwed it up.
Tell me how you screwed it up.
Okay, so I got lazy at the end of harvest, and I had been running all the stuff through a cleaner and then into the bin and then on air, and that works great. But my cleaner was slow. I'd upgraded from 20 bushels an hour to 150 bushels an hour, but that still takes a long time to unload a semi. And so I got lazy at the end, and I had a wagon full, about 300 bushels or so, and I didn't clean it, and I didn't put it on air, and I left it in the wagon in the shed so it'd be cooler than outside because it was August. But sitting for a week, that germ went from what was in the bin on air at 90, I think it was 94 or 96% germination. The stuff in the wagon was at 43% germination, just because I didn't put air on it. And so, yeah, that hurt a lot. And of course I kept that separate and ended up selling it to a neighbor for a tiny fraction of what it would have been worth had I gotten it cleaned and aired.
Yep.
But yeah.
Have you had any problem other than storage issues?
No, bugs.
Okay.
Yep. Bugs are a major issue for me. The third year I grew small grains, I was not using any insecticide to like bomb the bins beforehand, and that was a bad idea because I used the same bin year after year after year, and it never got perfectly cleaned out because I wasn't vacuuming. And so when I put grain in there, when I got down to the last 300-400 bushels, it was completely infested. And so now I got to use insecticide and keep an eye on things, and I get nervous when it warms up.
Yep.
Because yeah, the bugs will take a bin fast. It's amazing how much more damage they'll do in small grains than they will on corn or soybeans. Like, we never had problems with bugs in the corn, not like I have in the small grains.
Yep. And we had some problems with bugs. What happened we cleaned some old crop rye this summer, probably in June, and we cleaned it and put it in bags, in 50-pound bags, and then the bugs hatched in the bags. Of course, after we got them out the door to a customer, of course. And it was just one pallet. But when worms come out and moths come out of a bag of cereal rye, customer is not happy with you. And it's not a good look. And so, just little things like that. And it was completely out of our control. There's nothing we could have done other than fumigate our whole warehouse or fumigate that bin. But it was good rye. We cleaned it, we put it in. And, those are just little things that, you get black eyes and you learn about. And it's not like there's a roadmap for this anywhere else. So.
No, yeah, we're all flying blind.
Yeah, which that is the coolest thing about this business that I just love, and how I'm really excited about it. Because if you think about it, the corn and soybean business is basically split up, right? You have every neighbor has been a corn or soybean dealer, and they're just a revolving door of which company they are. And really, there's only 3 companies for the most part now. There's some independents, but for the most part, there's only 3. And this cover crop thing is just like you said. You said Iowa is, the wild, wild west on seed laws. It's also the wild, wild west on getting cover crop dealers, because I think rye in 10 years could be on 50-75% of the acres in the state of Iowa, and Sarah will probably message it in and say she thinks it's going to be 100%. But so there's going to be cover crop dealers in 10 years, just like there are seed and corn, seed corn and seed soybeans. Now that's my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, that would be awesome if it was that way, as long as, we're still around.
Yeah. Well, we always say that we don't have any competitor. So, I mean, Wade is only 60, 70 miles away, but he is not my competitor, because between here and there's tens and tens of thousands of acres that are fall tilled and not used covers. So our competitors is adoption, not really said person.
Yep.
So.
Yep, that's a fact. Yeah, our primary competition is tradition.
Yep.
We've always done it this way.
Absolutely. Yeah, and my dad is a traditional farmer. Fall tilling. And spring chisel, or spring field cultivator, and just like the traditional farmer. But since I came back, we started strip tilling. Everything's strip till now, and now as of 2016, 2017, everything was cover crops. So I mean, he's seeing the benefits, and the main benefit we're seeing is weed control that we can physically put dollar amount on.
Yeah.
And so weed control is huge. And then what we've done, and I'm sure you've done also on your farm, but there's a lot of cover crop programs and a lot of equip money out there to put on cover crops and to do this. And so like one thing part of a seed business is I'm sure your local NRCS office, they trust you. And so you're providing seed tags to them. You're getting all the correct documentation. And so when the customer comes in and they see Dooley Ag, stewardship invoice, they know it got done right. The seed was good quality. The right farm was applied. And so like that is a huge benefit, especially for the farmer, that he doesn't have to worry about as much red tape because you've already established that relationship at that NRCS office.
Yep. Yeah. The other thing that I've had to do is educate my customers that there are actually cost share dollars out there. Yeah. It's pretty remarkable the amount of information that isn't given to farmers.
Live under rocks?
Yeah. I mean, right?
There must be a lot of caves in Iowa.
Yeah, I had one customer who, I'd been drilling for him for a couple years, and I told him this year, like, hey, make sure you sign up for these cost share dollars. He says, oh, I've never done that. I'm like, what? Like I've been drilling for you for like 3 years and you've never signed up for anything. He ended up getting $35 an acre in cost share because he'd never done it before. I'm like, $35 an acre more than paid for what he had me do. So he actually made money on the deal.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, man.
And that's a really satisfying thing when you can have a customer that wants the cover crop and wants to improve their farm, and you can say, let me help you through these cost share programs and let me get this information to you. And so then not only are you putting on a product that's going to help water quality and soil health and all these things, but then they're getting paid to do it. And you get a really satisfied customer when you do all the work for them and they get
paid. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, we always encourage our guys to apply for equip monies and, do all these PFI's Unilever program with ADM down in Des Moines, and just get that information out, because if you can get a customer on those programs, it's typically a customer for 3 years. And we have yet to have a customer that have not re-enroll after that 3 years. And so it's, it's a good customer to have.
Yeah.
Can you both comment a little bit about, finding your customers? Like, do you struggle to find customers, or are you like trying to keep up, or like, what is your strategy for getting new customers? Is it word of mouth, social media, et cetera? Like, how does someone start finding a customer base?
Go ahead, Wade.
Well, so most of mine was word of mouth. We're a pretty tight-knit community here, and up until this year, the word of mouth was enough to keep me busy on all the acres I wanted to cover. Now I'm wanting to expand, so I'm going to have to step out beyond the word of mouth option and do some targeted marketing. And I'm still trying to figure that out because I don't like marketing. That's not one of my strengths. But yeah, I think James has a lot more experience in this area.
We are not very good at marketing either. That's one thing that we think we need to improve on. But our focus has been adding dealers very similar to Wade, who have drills that are chasing airplanes. Obviously, we want to sell them the seed. And so, they typically aren't raising small grains. But where we have gotten customers is our local retail customers out our backyard. It has grown some because of word of mouth, but it's only going to grow so much because right now it's just those guys that are using the practice. We basically get everyone in our little area. But for us to expand we have to get more people, more dealers. And so what we've really focused on is getting young guys that have a drill, they want to make extra money, Typically, they're seed corn or seed soybean dealers for somebody, and they have a network, and they've been really successful. And they all they all become an Iowa cover crop dealer, and they hope that they break even, or they get in front of a customer so they can sell them corn. That's essentially why they do it. And then what they find out, and Bill and I get a kick out of this every time, because it's inevitable. It happens every one of them. They'll go and they'll say, yeah, you won't believe this, but I made more in my cover crop sales than I did corn this year. And we're like, no, that's pretty normal. And so, we're really adding, we're trying to help those typically younger people. And I mean, they're just putting in sweat equity. And we do some print advertising. And the main thing is we want to make sure we want everyone to know that we can provide application in a good chunk of the state. And so we have a network that, and it doesn't matter if you're in, Cedar Rapids or in Sioux City, we have someone there that can drill rye for you, or chase an airplane, or do whatever those things are. And so that's how we've done marketing. We're active on social media, but compared to some other seed companies, we are poor marketers. But a rising tide lifts all boats. And so, Iowa's gone from when we started in 2014, Sarah's going to correct me, but I think we had 300,000 to 500,000 acres of cover crops. And I don't know exactly what we had this year, but I bet you it's nearing 2 million acres, or 1.5 million at least. And so just that added growth, and it's not, cover crops aren't the crazy guy next door putting them on. It's becoming much, much more mainstream, which has helped.
Yeah, a lot of the middle adopters are finally into it, so it's getting there. We've got a long ways to go to get everybody on board, but there's a lot more of the guys that drag their feet. They're starting to get around to it. So plenty of opportunity for everybody else to get their feet wet as well.
Yep. And what we've really tried to do, and this is a thing that Bill and I talk about a lot, is every community has an influencer. And, it's like that one farmer that everyone follows. And so we've really pushed in our local area to get those influencers on board. Because if you can get those influencers on board, if you pick up a 40 from him or her, you typically can get hundreds of acres from other people because they watch that influencer. And so it's no different than Kim Kardashian on Twitter. It's just like the little farming community, but that's what we see. And maybe it's gimmicky, but I don't know. We try that too.
Whatever works. Should we answer some more questions off the chat there, Lydia?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys. A quick one for you, Wade. Do you charge mileage if you have to travel with your drill?
Yes, I do. When I first got the drill, I didn't, but I talked to folks who were doing custom seeding elsewhere, and so they gave me some pointers. One was to put a minimum charge. So no matter what you do, you charge a certain amount to justify the work. I put on a minimum acre amount so that I wasn't running around putting in people's waterways with a 30-foot drill, because that's a nightmare. And then, tacking on a mileage charge. So I have stepped rates now, from 10 miles away to 20 miles away to 30 miles away. Each one has a set amount of money that it charges, because I'll have people that are 50 miles away want me to come and drill 25 acres, and I can't do that. It doesn't justify the cost. If they want me to come and do 250 acres and they're 30 miles, I'll make that trip, but they're going to pay me, because the roads are rough. The roads are damaging to equipment just as bad as a rough field is. And if I'm 25, 30 miles from home and I break down, I've got to have I've got to have some way of getting parts. So yeah, distance is a concern. What about you, James? What'd you guys end up deciding for your operations?
Yeah, so we don't actually run any drills ourselves. Bill's cousin has a drill. We have some guys around that do that. Typically, it's a flat rate, and if it's really far out and a tiny amount, we will step up and charge more money. It's the key is to make, like, what we find really difficult is, like, we'll fly out of an airport. Let's just say we flew out of Ames, and then we'll get done out of Ames, and then inevitably someone will call and say, "Oh, we heard you flying out of Ames." Yeah, yesterday, not today. And so, you know, you don't want to miss any business either, but sometimes you got to charge a little extra to go back and hammer someone out. That's just part of the game. Another thing that we really got bogged down on that we started charging a little bit more is small seeds. Everyone wants their own, like, separate little custom mix, and that's fine. That's awesome. But when you're trying to hammer out thousands of acres in the drill, and I'm sure, Wade, you see this all the time, like, you can't be blending 4 species of cereals and, like a 20 species cocktail. And that's great if you want to do it, but if you want to really get over a lot of acres, that's difficult to do.
Yep. Yeah. I don't have a lot of customers that want mixes, but every now and then I'll get somebody that wants a mix, and usually their field is right next to another customer that wants a straight run of rye. So now I've got either a blended batch in the drill that I've got to clean it completely out, or I've got straight rye in there that I'm going to have to blend the new stuff into, because obviously I'm not going to turn around and drive 15 miles home and to turn around and drive back again. So yeah, it's always a bit of a challenge when somebody, or best yet, when they change their mind. You get there and they say, "Oh yeah, I've also got these bags over here. If you could just go ahead and blend them as well." That's always fun.
And you have to remember that the seed business is selling seed and doing the application, and inevitably someone, like, gets a 50-cent a bushel deal on something, or $1 a bushel deal, and they want you to run it through your drill or airplane or whatever it is. And it's like, this isn't how this game works.
Yep.
Like, which I'm sure you've had those conversations too.
Yeah, I made the mistake once of trusting a customer when they said they got clean oats.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they were clean when they shoveled them out of the wagon.
Yep.
They were clean enough to run through a broadcaster. I plugged that drill completely solid. Every row was plugged. It looked clean.
Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I check everything now. They say, "Oh yeah, I've got this. If they're going to source the seed, I'll run it through my drill." I'm okay with that, but I'm going to check it before. Yeah, that one was a learning experience. I'm just glad it was on a small acreage and not hundreds of acres. But yeah.
Yep. I'll answer the question about seeding equipment. We started with a clipper. I don't know what the brand was. It ran about 200 to 250 an hour. And now we have a Cimbria 4-string cleaner and a gravity table. And on the oats, we have a length separator. It's an Oliver gravity table. I'm not sure the brand of the length separator. How much does a cleaning system for an established business cost? If you were to build a seed plant with dust control and a warehouse, and let's just say you want a capacity of 400 to 500 bushels an hour, which I don't know why you wouldn't build a seed plant without at least that, you're looking at close to 1.5 to 2 million roughly. And it isn't the seed equipment that gets you, it's all the legs. So we've been blessed to be able to lease a facility that has all that in there.
Yeah.
And do I recommend any particular sites for used equipment? There's some used companies. One that we talk to on parts and stuff is Commodity Traders International out of Southern Illinois. There is there's big companies like Bratney who sell cleaning equipment, but they're on large scale. So, but you can clean a lot of rye with a little clipper, especially for yourself.
Yeah, I'm still running smaller equipment. This is the year to upgrade for me. I started with the little 2B, which is the littlest clipper cleaner they made at 20 bushels an hour. You can do that if you're just going to do for farm use. There's nothing wrong with those things. You can buy them for $200, but you're doing 20 to 30 bushels an hour. I upgraded to a Farmstead Products 300 unit, and that one I run about 100 to 110 bushels an hour on that. And again, it's fine for personal use or for small scale. You're going to cover maybe 1,000 acres a year. But for scaling up, if you're going to run semi-loads of grain through it, you need something that's got capacity. I would agree. 400 or 500 bushels an hour is where you need to be at, because otherwise you just can't keep your augers full.
Yeah, and that's the challenge with this business, is because you only have 30 days, essentially, at least to chase an airplane. Maybe you got 45 or 50 with drill, but you don't have a lot of time. So if you're going to invest a lot of money in a seed plant, what are you going to do the other 10 months out of the year? So, you know, that's a problem. That's one Bill and I are always, you know, trying to figure out. We run buckwheat, we run oats, and it's not a huge margin business, but it's just like, you got to keep something in your seed cleaning facility.
Yeah, it's like buying a combine and then only using it for one grain.
Yeah. Well, their comments start flying in now. Any truth to the notion of Southern Elbon rye can bring in Palmer? Wade, you want that one?
Anything can bring in weeds if you don't clean it. We got rye out of the Dakotas, and they brought in weeds because it wasn't cleaned well enough. If you don't know where you're sourcing your seed from, you should probably source it from a different dealer. If you're just getting VNS and you're just trusting your guy to bring it to you and they don't tell you anything, it doesn't have a label, then it's not worth buying at all. The Palmer Amaranth scare that everyone got nutty about back when the pollinator mixes were going out for CRP, holy cow, that got everybody upset about bringing seed in with weeds in it. And it'd been an issue for decades. We just didn't ever talk about it until the CRP went nuts. And now everyone's scared of bringing Palmer in. We already have resistant weeds here. So it's not like one more is going to be the thing that, you know, it's not the last straw that breaks the camel's back. We've already got plenty of stuff here to worry about. And rye doesn't play well with the Amaranth species anyway, because that's what we use to control water hemp on our farm, is rye as a cover crop. Well, Palmer is in the same family, right? So rye would help control Palmer just as well. But sourcing your seed from a reliable dealer and making sure that it is actually clean and making sure it's been properly tested and, you know, it's labeled right, you should be fine.
Yep. And all the germination and noxious weeds and lots legally have to be on seed tag. One thing that I didn't know about before I got in the business is, you know, you can have weeds in your seed. You just can't have the restricted noxious weeds in your seed. So, so those seed rules kind of go into play.
So we can go back to drills. There's more questions about like drill recommendations. There's also a question here about organic seed brands or grain types for like a beginning year one business. I don't know which you'd prefer to take.
I'll take the drills.
Go for it.
So my drill is a Landall 30-footer. That's a big box drill with airbags for down pressure. I really like that one. There are quite a few manufacturers out there of grain drills of various types, and most of them are really pretty good. The reason I went with the Landall was because I had already talked to somebody who had a different brand, and they were explaining all the things that were wrong with that brand. Because once you own a piece of equipment, you very quickly find out all its weak points. And so I went for something that had the fewest weak points, or seemed to. I haven't had too many problems with mine, but they're expensive machines. All grain drills are expensive, and if they're not expensive, they're going to be very shortly. Used equipment, especially in central Iowa, is really hard to come by. Most of the grain drills in this area are 40 years old, so they're shot. I mean, it's a complete rebuild almost every time you buy a used one. So you got to figure out what your parts are going to cost you. I would highly recommend anybody who wants to get into this business, into the seeding business, get a no-till capable drill. Don't get a conventional drill or a minimum till drill. Get a no-till drill, because you're going to run into conditions that are incredible. This year we had the derecho roll through, and my drill went through all of that trash just fine. But if I'd have had a conventional drill, no, there's no way. They never would have cut down through the material. Some years you end up running in ground that's just harder than concrete, like after silage harvest is a great one. A lot of folks just want you to roll right in and start drilling, and that ground is rock hard. And so you need a piece of equipment that can cut through into that. But there's a lot of them out there. You just got to figure out what your price point's going to be, and then try and get the best that you can. But I can't recommend one brand over another. I like mine. I don't know if I'll buy another one. I think so. I'd like to get bigger. I'd like to go faster. So we'll see. What about you, James?
Yeah, I had a drill for a little bit. I bought a horrible one out of Arkansas. It was a disaster. I no longer have a drill. Nor will I ever buy a drill again, I think, in my lifetime, because it was such a bad experience. So I'm just gonna let guys like Wade drill for me, and I'll just pay them. That's my drill experience. When you said they're all worn out, I bought one of those wore out ones. So, but I'll talk about organic seed. Are there any organic seed brands? Basically, all the organic small grains and cover crops are all either certified plant protected varieties like Dillon, Gardner, or they are varieties that are open, which are Hazlitt, Ryman, etc. Would I recommend any one over the other? Not necessarily, because they're all the same. Just have a organic label on them. So, and I mean that's one thing we're going to start getting into is organic seed, just because we think there's a need. Have we tried growing rye and vetch together? We buy some rye and vetch that gets grown together. It's a very common companion crop, especially in the north. It does already have the vetch spiraled out of it. It is pretty common, and I've heard good things. And so if you are trying some rye and you have if you're putting on your own acres, and that's something you could definitely do. The problem with, I'm sure, like with Wade, is one guy would want vetch and one guy would not, and that's one more thing you have to run through your spiralizer. But if you're running it all yourself, I'd go ahead and try it, because they combine together really well.
Just remember that vetch has hard seed, so you may have vetch for the rest of your life.
Yep. And that's the same as in the mustard families too. A lot of guys, mustard was really hot a couple of years ago, and mustard's 15, 20% hard seed sometimes. So that can happen too.
Yep.
And if you talk to the guys in the West, in the South, like in Kansas, rye is just a swear word. Rye, they say, will grow. There's rye fields that they say haven't had rye in 50, 75 years. And then they'll till or do something, or something will change, and they'll have a bunch of volunteer rye come up because that rye was buried and comes back up. So, I think if we have apocalypse, we'll have starlings and rats and rye. That's my prediction. That will still come up.
Yeah, the other thing about rye, especially in wheat country, you can't clean it out of wheat. And that was their biggest issue. I've tried to clean rye out of oats before, and it doesn't happen. It's a real pain. What are some other questions?
We sometimes get rye with spring wheat in it, especially out north. It happens. Sometimes spring wheat. This is a problem, and you can't clean it out. The only thing you can do is call a customer and say, "Hey, a full spring wheat in your rye, you know, at a massive discount." So those are some things to think of. The first year we raised triticale, we did a poor job of cleaning out our seed cleaner, and we had about 10 to 15% rye in our trit, which that made it unsaleable to, I mean, we were able to sell it for cover crops, but it was unsaleable for anybody that wanted to pay a premium for triticale. Those are some things you got to be really cognizant of if you're going to plant it for seed.
We are a little low on time. There's a question about, what ways have you adjusted your corn and soybean farming operation to maximize the value of cover crops? I know, Wade, you're saying you're growing less, or that sometimes your own acres get, the worst treatment, but, instead, what recommendations would you make to customers to maximize the value of cover crops in their corn and soybean operation?
Shorter season crops. Go with shorter season corn, shorter season soybeans, so you have a bigger window in the fall to get stuff growing. In the spring, don't be the first one out there to plant. So rather than trying to get your corn crop in on the 10th of April, you can plant at the 10th of May and get 2 to 3 times the cover crop growth in the springtime. And then you maximize your investment on that cover crop by delaying your planting a little bit. You're not delaying it enough that you're going to damage your overall yield unless it's a freak spring, which we've had a few of those. But yeah, those are my 2 main recommendations to maximize cover crops. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest maximized cover crops, other than what you said, is ruminants, livestock. I mean, cows, sheep. That's how you're going to get the most physical return for your dollar, is livestock.
Perfect. Well, I hate to cut us off because I would like to continue talking to you both, but we are at the end of our hour.